Have you ever felt a deep sense of loneliness, even when surrounded by friends, family, or a crowd of strangers? It's unsettling, isn't it? Loneliness isn't confined to empty rooms or quiet nights. It can creep into your heart even in the most vibrant spaces, leaving you feeling disconnected and invisible. But what if I told you that loneliness isn't your enemy? What if it's not something you need to escape, but rather a powerful teacher waiting to guide you? In Buddhism, loneliness is not seen as a fixed state of suffering. Instead, it's viewed as an opportunity, a chance to pause, reflect, and transform. In this video, we'll uncover 7 profound lessons from Buddhist wisdom that will not only help you overcome loneliness, but also teach you how to build resilience and cultivate a deeper connection with yourself. Let's begin this transformative journey together and see how these teachings can change your thoughts about loneliness. Lesson 1. Identifying the root cause of loneliness. Understanding loneliness begins with a crucial realization. It isn't simply about being alone. Often, we believe that loneliness is caused by external circumstances, being separated from loved ones, feeling excluded, or lacking meaningful relationships. While these factors play a role, the deeper truth is more complex. Loneliness is often rooted in unmet expectations and cravings for connection that go unfulfilled. As the Buddha taught in the Dhammapada, verse 338, just as a tree will sprout again if its roots remain uncut, suffering will return if its cause is not removed. Loneliness is like that tree. We often try to cut it down by seeking distractions, clinging to people, or filling our time with activity. But the roots, the cravings, and unrealistic expectations we place on ourselves and others remain buried within us, causing loneliness to grow back again and again. The first step to overcoming this feeling is to turn inward and examine your expectations. Are you hoping for others to meet every emotional need? Are you placing your happiness entirely in the hands of external connections? These patterns of thought create the gap between what you desire and what reality provides, making the space for loneliness to thrive. To begin addressing this, practice self-reflection through journaling or quiet contemplation. Take 10 minutes each day to ask yourself, what am I expecting from others? And is it realistic or fair? Am I seeking something from outside that I can cultivate within myself? This simple exercise can help you uncover the hidden roots of your loneliness and empower you to let go of the expectations that no longer serve you. When you start to shift your focus inward and release these unrealistic demands, you'll notice something remarkable. The heavy burden of loneliness begins to lighten, and in its place grows a newfound sense of clarity and peace. It all starts with recognizing that the cause of your suffering isn't out there, it's within, and that's exactly where transformation begins. Lesson 2. Transforming loneliness into an opportunity for inner growth. Now that we've identified the root cause of loneliness, it's time to shift our perspective. Instead of viewing loneliness as a void to escape, what if we embraced it as a space for profound inner growth? In Buddhism, this idea is closely tied to the concept of vipassana, or insight meditation. Vipassana teaches us to observe our experiences without judgment, seeing them as opportunities for understanding rather than obstacles to avoid. Loneliness, when approached with mindfulness, becomes a unique chance to turn inward and nurture our inner values. A powerful illustration of this comes from the life of the Buddha himself. Before his enlightenment, the Buddha practiced extreme asceticism, believing that denying the body was the path to liberation. During this time, he was accompanied by 5 fellow seekers who admired his dedication and believed he would soon achieve enlightenment. However, after years of harsh self-mortification, the Buddha realized this path was not leading him closer to liberation. Recognizing the futility of his approach, he decided to abandon it and pursue the middle way. a path of balance and mindfulness. This decision shattered the expectations of his 5 companions, who saw his change of course as a failure. Disillusioned, they left him, and the Buddha found himself completely alone in the forest. But instead of succumbing to despair, he embraced the silence and solitude. This period of being alone became his greatest opportunity for self-discovery. Free from external distractions, he focused entirely on his inner world, cultivating the clarity and insight that eventually led to his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. The Buddha's experience teaches us that loneliness isn't inherently negative. In fact, it can be a rare and precious opportunity to deepen our connection with ourselves. When we stop fearing solitude and start using it as a tool for growth, we unlock the potential to develop our inner strength, values, and wisdom. To apply this lesson in your own life, start by dedicating a few minutes each day to being fully present with yourself. Find a quiet space, sit comfortably, and practice mindfulness by observing your thoughts without judgment. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this moment of solitude? How can I use this time to strengthen my inner values? Over time, you'll begin to see loneliness not as an empty space, but as fertile ground for personal transformation. When we change how we see loneliness, we change its power over us. Instead of something to fear, it becomes something to treasure, a reminder that within the quiet, we can find ourselves. Lesson 3. Cultivating a healthy relationship with yourself. As we embrace solitude and use it as a tool for inner growth, the next step is learning to become our own best companion. In Buddhism, the concept of metta, or loving kindness, begins with oneself. Before we can extend genuine compassion to others, we must first learn to treat ourselves with the same kindness and care. But here's the challenge. Many of us are harsh critics of ourselves. We replay our mistakes, dwell on our shortcomings, and often become our own worst enemy. If this is the relationship you have with yourself, it's no wonder that being alone feels so unbearable. A story from the Buddha's teachings offers a profound insight into this dilemma. Once, a young monk came to the Buddha, overwhelmed by self-doubt and self-criticism. The monk confessed that he felt like a failure, unable to meet the high standards he had set for himself. The Buddha listened patiently and then asked the monk, "If someone were holding a small bird in their hands, how should they care for it?" The monk replied, "With gentleness, so as not to harm it." The Buddha nodded and said, "Then why do you crush yourself with harsh judgment instead of holding yourself with that same gentleness?" This story reminds us that self-love isn't indulgent, it's essential. To build a positive relationship with ourselves, we must balance honesty with forgiveness. Yes, acknowledge your mistakes, but don't let them define you. Instead, treat them as opportunities to learn and grow. Like the small bird in the story, handle yourself with care, recognizing your inherent worth and potential. To begin this practice, start with small, intentional acts of kindness toward yourself. At the end of each day, write down 3 things you appreciate about yourself, perhaps a kind action, a moment of perseverance, or simply showing up for yourself. When negative thoughts arise, gently counter them with affirmations of understanding and encouragement, just as you would for a dear friend. By cultivating loving kindness within, you create a foundation of resilience and peace that allows you to thrive, both in solitude and in connection with others. And remember, as the Buddha taught, you, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Let this be the cornerstone of the relationship you build with yourself. Lesson 4. Transforming your perspective on loneliness. Building on the idea that solitude can nurture inner growth, it's equally vital to shift how we perceive loneliness. In Buddhism, the concept of dukkha, often translated as suffering, teaches us that pain is not solely rooted in life's circumstances, but in how we respond to them. As the Buddha wisely stated, all suffering in the world arises from how we perceive things. Loneliness, in this sense, isn't inherently painful. It's our resistance to it, our judgment of it as bad, that magnifies our suffering. When we cling to the belief that loneliness is a sign of failure or inadequacy, we trap ourselves in a cycle of negativity, deepening the very discomfort we're trying to escape. The Buddha beautifully illustrated this in the parable of the two arrows. Imagine a man walking through a forest. Suddenly, he's struck by an arrow. The pain from the wound is sharp, unavoidable, and real. It represents life's inevitable challenges, like the loss of a loved one or feelings of isolation. But then, the man picks up a second arrow and stabs himself, crying out, "Why me? Why did this happen? How is this fair?" This second arrow symbolizes the mental suffering we create through our reactions. Instead of accepting the first arrow with grace, we compound the pain by adding layers of self-pity, resistance, and judgment. In the context of loneliness, the first arrow might be the natural state of being alone, a period of separation from others, or a lack of deep connections. The second arrow, however, is our belief that being alone is inherently negative, that it reflects a personal failure, or that it's permanent. This mindset traps us in despair, but the Buddha's teachings remind us that we have the power to change our perspective. Loneliness isn't inherently harmful, it's how we frame it that determines its impact. To reframe loneliness as a teacher rather than an enemy, start by exploring what this quiet space offers you. When you feel isolated, pause and ask, "What can I learn from this moment of solitude? How can I use this time to strengthen my inner values?" Loneliness provides an opportunity to practice self-reflection and gratitude, uncovering strengths you didn't realize you had. It allows you to step away from the constant noise of external validation and rediscover your intrinsic worth. To deepen this practice, consider starting a gratitude journal focused on your alone time. Each evening, write down 3 ways that solitude has benefited you. Perhaps it gave you clarity to make an important decision, time to pursue a passion, or simply the space to rest and recharge. Over time, these reflections will help you see loneliness not as a void, but as a fertile ground for personal growth. Remember, loneliness isn't an affliction, it's an experience. And like all experiences, it is transient, shaped not by its presence, but by the meaning we assign to it. By transforming your perspective, you'll uncover that what once felt like a burden can become a profound teacher, guiding you to greater understanding, resilience, and inner peace. Lesson 5. Taking responsibility for your life. As we learn to transform loneliness into a teacher and reframe it as an opportunity for growth, the next step is to take full responsibility for our lives. In Buddhism, the principle of karma, is central to understanding this concept. Karma teaches that our actions, of body, speech, and mind, shape not only our current reality, but also our future. It's a reminder that we hold immense power over the direction of our lives, yet this power comes with responsibility. Blaming others, external circumstances, or even past mistakes robs us of the ability to create meaningful change. A story from the Dhammapada highlights this truth. Once, a farmer approached the Buddha, overwhelmed with complaints about his life. He lamented about poor crops, difficult relationships, and the inevitable challenges of aging and sickness. After patiently listening, the Buddha replied, "I cannot solve your 83 problems. Life will always have these. But there is one problem you can solve, your attachment to blaming them for your suffering." This story illustrates that while we cannot control every challenge we face, we can control how we respond to them. The farmer's real issue wasn't his circumstances, but his refusal to take ownership of his reactions and choices. Taking responsibility means recognizing that your life is in your hands. It doesn't mean ignoring genuine hardships or pretending everything is perfect. Instead, it's about acknowledging your agency in navigating those challenges. For example, if you feel stuck in loneliness, ask yourself, "Am I waiting for someone else to fix this for me? What small steps can I take to improve my situation today?" To embrace this lesson, start by identifying one area of your life where you feel dissatisfied. Write down specific actions you can take to create positive change, no matter how small. This could mean reaching out to reconnect with an old friend, committing to a new habit, or even simply choosing to practice gratitude for what is working well in your life. The Buddha taught, purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. This teaching is a profound reminder that we alone are responsible for shaping our inner world. By taking responsibility, you reclaim the power to transform your life, step by step, choice by choice. In doing so, you not only overcome loneliness, but also build a foundation of strength and resilience that no external force can shake. Lesson 6. Overcoming loneliness through mindfulness of the 4 foundations. As we've explored the many ways to transform loneliness and build inner strength, one profound practice that offers both clarity and peace is satipatthana, or the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Rooted in the Buddha's teachings, this method involves observing the body, kaya, feelings, vedana, mind, citta, and mental phenomena, dhamma, to cultivate a deep understanding of your present reality. It's a way of truly sitting with yourself, not to escape loneliness, but to see it clearly, accept it fully, and transcend its grip on your mind. When we feel lonely, our first instinct is often to run away from the discomfort, seeking distractions, numbing our emotions, or blaming external circumstances. Yet, satipatthana teaches us that liberation comes not from avoidance, but from observation. By turning inward with mindfulness, we begin to notice how loneliness manifests in our body, perhaps a tight chest or restless movement. We observe the sensations of our feelings, the ache of longing or the heaviness of isolation. We examine the thoughts in our mind, judgments like, "I'm unworthy," or fears of being alone forever. And finally, we see these mental formations for what they are, impermanent, shifting states that arise and pass away like clouds in the sky. A story from the Buddha's life illuminates this practice beautifully. Once, while meditating in solitude, the Buddha was confronted by Mara, the embodiment of doubt and suffering. Mara whispered discouraging thoughts, attempting to break his focus. Instead of fighting or fleeing, the Buddha calmly acknowledged Mara's presence, saying, "I see you, Mara." This simple act of recognition dissolved Mara's power, and he disappeared. Through satipatthana, we learn to say, "I see you, loneliness," stripping it of its control over us. To integrate this practice into your life, set aside 10 minutes each day for mindfulness meditation. Begin by focusing on your breath, anchoring yourself in the present moment. Gradually, expand your awareness to include your body, noticing sensations without judgment. Then, turn your attention to your feelings, allowing them to arise and observing them as they are, not as you wish them to be. Finally, reflect on your thoughts, seeing them as passing mental events rather than fixed truths. As you cultivate mindfulness, you'll find that loneliness loses its sting. Instead of a burden, it becomes an invitation to sit with yourself, to explore the depths of your being, and to reconnect with the richness of your inner world. Through satipatthana, you gain not only freedom from the pain of loneliness, but also the profound insight that peace and connection already exist within you. Lesson 7. Embracing impermanence to overcome loneliness. As we've explored mindfulness practices to face loneliness with clarity and compassion, there's a deeper realization within Buddhist teachings that can bring profound peace, the understanding of anicca, or impermanence. At its core, anicca reminds us that everything in life, every thought, feeling, and circumstance, is temporary. Just as clouds drift across the sky, changing shape and eventually disappearing, so too do our emotions, including loneliness. Recognizing this truth allows us to experience loneliness without becoming trapped by it, knowing that it, too, will pass. Consider this. How often do we feel overwhelmed by loneliness because we believe it's permanent? Thoughts like, "I'll always feel this way," or "this emptiness will never go away," can weigh heavily on our minds. Yet, when we observe closely, we begin to notice that even the most intense feelings shift and fade over time. The Buddha taught this through the metaphor of the river, constantly flowing, never stagnant, and always changing. In the same way, our emotions are dynamic and ever-evolving. One story from the Buddha's life beautifully illustrates this truth. After attaining enlightenment, the Buddha encountered a grieving woman named Kisa Gotami, whose child had recently died. Overcome with despair, she pleaded with the Buddha to bring her child back to life. Instead, the Buddha gently instructed her to bring him a mustard seed from a household untouched by death. As Kisa went from home to home, she found that every family had experienced loss. Through this journey, she realized that suffering is universal, but it is not eternal. By embracing the impermanence of life, she found the strength to let go and move forward. To apply this lesson, begin by practicing mindful observation of your emotions. When loneliness arises, instead of resisting it or fearing its permanence, take a moment to sit with it. Acknowledge its presence and remind yourself, this is temporary. Like a wave in the ocean, it will rise and eventually fall. You might also find it helpful to visualize your emotions as leaves floating down a stream, constantly moving, never fixed. By embracing impermanence, you gain the freedom to experience loneliness without being consumed by it. You begin to see it not as a fixed state, but as a momentary ripple in the ever-changing flow of life. And with this perspective, you discover that within the impermanence of loneliness lies the potential for transformation, growth, and ultimately, peace. Now that we've explored 7 meaningful lessons to help you overcome loneliness and connect deeply with yourself, what if I told you that you've never truly been alone, even when you find yourself in solitude? This may sound like a paradox, but it is a perspective rooted in the Buddhist concept of sunyata, or emptiness. Far from implying a void, sunyata reveals that there is no fixed, separate self. Instead, all beings and phenomena are interconnected within the vast web of life. Think about it. Every breath you take is connected to the trees that produce oxygen. Every meal you eat relies on the efforts of countless people and natural processes, and even your thoughts and emotions are shaped by interactions with the world around you. The idea of a completely independent self is an illusion. In this light, loneliness isn't the absence of others, it's a misunderstanding of our inherent interconnection. When you truly understand this, you begin to see that even in solitude, you are deeply linked to everything and everyone. The Buddha illustrated this beautifully in the Avatamsaka Sutra with the metaphor of Indra's net. Imagine a vast cosmic net stretching infinitely in all directions, with a jewel at each intersection. Each jewel reflects every other jewel in the net, creating an infinite interplay of light. This symbolizes the interconnected nature of all existence. Each of us is a jewel in this net, reflecting and being reflected by others. Loneliness, in this context, is not a state of separation, but a failure to perceive the intricate connections that bind us together. To embody this truth in your daily life, start by practicing gratitude for the interconnectedness around you. Reflect on the people, environments, and circumstances that support you, even in moments when you feel alone. Acknowledge the unseen threads that connect you to others, the stranger who smiled at you, the author whose words inspired you, or the quiet strength of nature that sustains you. You might also meditate on the breath, visualizing how each inhalation and exhalation connects you to the living world. Understanding sunyata transforms loneliness into a profound sense of belonging. You realize that you are not an isolated being drifting through a disconnected world. Rather, you are an integral part of a boundless, ever-changing network of life. And with this awareness, even the quietest moments of solitude become filled with the vibrant presence of all existence, reminding you that you have never and will never truly be alone. As we conclude this journey, remember, loneliness is not a battle to win, but an opportunity to grow, connect with yourself, and become your best self. These lessons show how solitude can teach you to embrace impermanence, build self-compassion, and see the interconnectedness of life. Now take action. Turn this moment into a path of self-discovery, cultivating peace and strength within. One day, you'll look back and thank loneliness for making you wiser and more compassionate. If you found this valuable, share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected for more inspiring content. Thank you for being here. You are never truly alone, and within you lies all the strength and peace you need. Until next time, take care and keep moving forward with courage and mindfulness. See you soon.